In this video, we have an absolute value equation with some fractions. Now, the first step you always want to do with an absolute value equation is to isolate the absolute value. So that's this negative x plus 4 inside the absolute value bars. In order to isolate that, just like if this were 7 halves times w, you would divide by the coefficient, divide by what is being multiplied by that absolute value. And that's how we are going to get this absolute value by itself. So divide each side by 7 halves. Well, dividing by 7 halves and dividing by 7 halves, that gets rid of the 7 halves on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have 1 half divided by 7 halves. Well, that's the same as 1 half multiplied by 2 over 7. So the 2's can cancel, and this kind of works out nice. Well, we have 1 over 7 then on the other side. So let's keep going with that. So the absolute value of negative x plus 4, let's make those absolute value bars bigger, equals 1 over 7. Okay, now we have our two mini equations, because what's inside here, that's this part, can be equal to either positive 1 over 7, and that would give us our 1 over 7, or what's inside here could equal to negative 1 over 7, and that would also be equal to 1 over 7 because it would be the absolute value of negative 1 over 7. So we'll set up our two equations. Negative x plus 4, it either equals the positive 1 over 7, or we have negative x plus 4 equals negative 1 over 7. Now, what are you going to do with this fraction? Well, anytime you see a fraction, now that we've gotten rid of the absolute value bars, now what we want to do is clear the fraction by multiplying through by the lowest common denominator. And in both of these equations, we'll just start here though, the lowest common denominator, there is only one denominator, so it's just going to be 7. And we'll multiply everything by 7. And what happens there? Well, I like to kind of show this like distribution because it reminds us that we're multiplying everything by 7. And certainly what this means is that we're multiplying the left-hand side by 7 and the right-hand side by 7, because whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side. Okay, so 7 times negative x, that's negative 7x. 7 times 4, that's 28. 7 times 1 over 7, this is why we multiply by that common denominator, is so that we can get rid of the fraction. 7 times 1 over 7 is just 1. Okay, from here, I'm just going to kind of jump to it here. We're going to end up with a fraction answer, but that's okay. So I'll subtract 28, and I'll divide by negative 7, and so x equals, let's see, 1 minus 28 would give negative 27. And then we'll divide by negative 7. Hey, we've got a negative divided by a negative, so I'll just stretch that over here and say x equals positive 27 over 7. Okay, that's one of our solutions. Over here, same thing. We're going to multiply through by 7 to clear that fraction. And what we get is negative 7x plus 28 equals negative 1 this time, because we've got negative 1 over 7 times 7. Quickly solving this, or continuing with that, we have negative 7x plus 28 equals negative 21. We subtract 28 from each side, and we get negative 7x equals negative 29, and then we divide by the negative 7, so we have negative 29 over negative 7. Well, negative divided by a negative, let's say that is x equals 29 over 7. So those are our two possible solutions. Let's look real quick and see if that'll work out. Yeah, that's not going to give us anything weird here. So those are the solutions. I hope that helps. And I thought I would finish there, but I need to explain what I meant here by nothing weird. If we plug in 27 over 7, we have negative 27 over 7. here, it makes the equation true. And also, if we plugged in 29 over 7, we would have negative 29 over 7. And that is, the negative is coming from here. It's not from our solution. If we plugged that in and worked it through, we would get this to be a true statement. Sometimes you get what's called an extraneous solution that you have to throw out. But these are both good solutions. So 27 over 7 and 29 over 7 are the solutions.